I was fortunate to be placed in the town of Kujukuri in Chiba, which was this amazing combination of the Inaka experience, plus I was able to be 2 hours from Tokyo, which was nice. Which wasn't as nice was the fact that my town didn't have a train. One of my JTEs, we were actually driving around and yelling at the kids riding home without their bicycle helmets because that was a thing he asked help with for some reason. And there was this perfect bike path that intersected the town, which was great. He finally told me that the reason why there's this perfect path is because Japan ran out of metal during World War II and they needed more metal. And they haven't gotten to fix it in 60, 70 years. So I relied on the bus. And the bus was great because I was able to go to Chiba Station in an hour. What wasn't great was the last bus was at like 8. So I was either crashing on other Jets coaches or I was always the first to leave. Then about a year in, I discovered that there was a bus to Tokyo that was about 10K away from me. And there's like a taxi stand and I tested it out once and it was really cool. So in those moments I was desperate. I could take this bus home at like, I think midnight from Tokyo. So ironically it was further, but I could get home fast. So one of my best friends from study abroad was visiting and it's my friend Jake. I think we all just know that person that it's just fun to be around them. Like you can't not have fun when you're with them. And I was in kind of my rough jet phase as well. That seems to be another common theme. So I was super excited for this. He was a YouTuber. He recorded a lot of our study abroad adventures, stuff that probably doesn't mean much to most people, but there's nostalgic value for us. So the only problem was, so I had this one weekend to meet up with him and the friends he came to Japan with. The only problem was that it was Friday, and I was taking JLPT on Sunday, and we were just going to have fun the whole weekend. And this is really the one time I bent the rules bent the rules in terms of leaving work early. I told a half truth. Just because I'll admit I was having FOMO. They were sharing on Facebook these wild adventures. I'm like, I got to get to Tokyo now. So I went up to my Kocho sensei, half lie, half truth, one of the, and I said, my friend's leaving Japan, which technically he was. What I didn't mention is he was just like on a trip here, but I didn't have any classes scheduled. So he's like, yeah, go, it's cool. Honestly, they were good with it. So I went, had the time of our lives, just constant fun. There were costumes involved in broad daylight. It was just an awesome, awesome weekend. And then Saturday night came, and I didn't take my bicycle to this bus station, so I had to make this last bus. And we had been sipping whiskeys at the Lost in Translation bar in Shinjuku. I'd never been there. It was one of his bucket list item things. So I had to sprint for this last bus that I'd only taken once before in the daylight. And it was in a part, Tokyo Station. It's the third busiest train station in the world. Shinjuku and Ikebukuro are right above it. So I was just having trouble finding the bus. And I finally managed to do it. But it's going to be a rough ride when you get on the bus. And they have, all the seats are filled, and they have like those temporary seats down in the aisle. So it was a Manin bus, highway bus, which I hadn't been on. And the driver was very agitated. I had this bag that had to go under, but I was thrilled that I made it back to Togane, which was the neighboring city near me. And it was like 1 a.m. Before JLPT the next morning. And I was nervous, like actually nervous when I realized that there were no taxis. And I was calling up the taxi company and no one was picking up. And I'd realized that it's great that there's this last bus, but I learned at that moment, unless I take my bike there, it's going to be like a 2.5 hour walk back home. And I was doing the whole thought process that have come up in a few other stories. It's do I call up? I knew the Jets in Togane, but I didn't like knock on their door at 1 a.m. know them. So that was a tricky one. So I started to like walk home, and I sort of stood on the corner trying to just see if a taxi would drive by, and then this car just drives up next to me because hitchhiking seems to be a theme tonight. And it was a Daiko, which for those who weren't Inaka Jets, it's basically a taxi with two people where they'll drive your car home for you. And I was like, I don't have a car. And they're like, yeah, just call me. Call us anytime. We're like happy to drive you. It's all good. So just these two random guys drove me back home. And I did not pass JLPT. So I honestly should have just spent the whole night out again and saved this whole story. But, it is what it is. Part two of that story is I tried that theory again. I took the same bus. I called the number for the Daiko, and they said that, oh, do you have a car? I said no, and then they just hung up. So fortunately, a taxi went along that time, but I knew to be super careful using that last bus. I learned that, if you're not going to pass a test anyways, don't take it if you don't need to, which is kind of a weird moral. But it was just a fun, memorable night, and somewhat scary in the sense that I had a test going on the next day. But yeah, fun to share, and thank you for the opportunity.